Beloved, your soulmate is begging you to hear them one last time. Not because they want to drag you back into another cycle. Not because they suddenly became lonely. And not because they expect one emotional conversation to erase everything that happened between you. Your soulmate knows they may have already used up every chance you were willing to give. They know there was a period when you would have answered immediately. A period when one message from them could change your entire night. A period when you still wanted an explanation badly enough to keep the door open. That version of you is different now. And your soulmate knows it. That is why the message they are preparing does not say, "Please take me back." It says, "Please hear me once. After that, if you never want to speak to me again, I will respect it." Beloved, something happened recently. Something your soulmate never thought would happen. A person from your past finally told the truth. And that confession exposed a secret your soulmate has been carrying for years. A secret connected to the exact moment you stopped trusting them. The moment you looked at your soulmate and asked, "How could you do that to me?" And beloved, your soulmate let you believe they had. They watched your face change. They watched trust leave your eyes. They heard you say things they still remember word for word. And instead of defending themselves, they accepted the blame. That is the truth they can no longer carry. Because, beloved, the betrayal that ended your relationship was not committed by your soulmate. They took responsibility for something another person did. And the person they were protecting was someone you loved deeply. That is why they stayed silent. Beloved, go back to that period. You were trusting your soulmate with something important. Perhaps a private plan. A decision you had not told your family yet. Maybe you were preparing to move. Apply for something. Leave a job. Make a major relationship decision. Whatever it was, you specifically said, "Please don't tell anyone yet." Your soulmate promised, "I won't." And perhaps for a few days, everything was normal. Then suddenly, someone who absolutely should not have known confronted you. Maybe a family member called. Perhaps they said, "So you were just going to do this without telling us?" Beloved, your stomach dropped. How did they know? Only a handful of people had the information. Perhaps only one person. Your soulmate. You immediately thought, they told them. Maybe you called your soulmate. Did you say something? They hesitated. That hesitation destroyed them. You asked again, "Did you tell them?" And instead of saying no, your soulmate said, "I'm sorry." Beloved, that was enough. You did not need another confession. "I'm sorry" sounded exactly like, "Yes. I betrayed you." Perhaps you became furious. "You promised me." "I know. I trusted you." "I know." Why? Beloved, your soulmate had an answer. The real answer. But they refused to say it. Instead, "I thought it was better this way." Maybe that sentence made everything worse. You felt controlled. Exposed. Humiliated. You had trusted this person with something private, and now they were telling you they had decided what was better for you. Perhaps you said, "You had no right." Your soulmate replied, "You're right." Beloved, again. No defense. And somewhere in your heart, something closed. Because perhaps you could tolerate fear. You could tolerate mistakes. But this? You thought your soulmate had taken something you trusted them with and handed it directly to the people you were afraid would interfere. Maybe that family interference created real consequences. Arguments. Pressure. Perhaps your plan became harder. Maybe somebody talked you out of something. Maybe relationships were damaged. And every time you looked at the consequences, you thought, "This started because I trusted them." Beloved, your soulmate became associated with one of the worst feelings, being unsafe with somebody you loved. Maybe you ended the relationship shortly afterward. Perhaps not instantly. Maybe you tried. But once trust breaks, ordinary behavior begins looking different. A delayed response feels suspicious. A vague answer feels like another hidden decision. You start wondering, what else have they told people? What else do they know? What other private parts of me are no longer private? Your soulmate saw you changing. They knew why. And beloved, they still did not tell you. For years, perhaps you believed they chose silence because they were guilty. The truth? They chose silence because someone begged them. Someone you would never have suspected. Beloved, the information had actually been shared by a person very close to you. Perhaps your closest relative. Someone who had access to you during that period. Maybe a sibling. A cousin you treated like a sibling. A lifelong friend considered family. This person had seen the information accidentally. Maybe your phone was unlocked. Perhaps they overheard part of a conversation. Maybe you left paperwork somewhere. Nothing sinister at first. They discovered your plan. And they panicked. Why? Because your decision affected them. If you moved, perhaps they feared losing you. If you left the family business, perhaps responsibilities would change. If you accepted an opportunity, maybe their own situation became unstable. Beloved, instead of speaking honestly to you, they told someone else. They thought, if the family knows, maybe they can stop this. Perhaps they called your parent. Maybe another influential relative. And suddenly your private plan was no longer private. Your soulmate discovered what happened quickly. Maybe the person called them. Panicking. I messed up. Your soulmate asked, "What did you do?" They confessed. Beloved, your soulmate became furious. They trusted me with that. I know. Why did you tell anyone? I was scared. Then came the request that changed everything. Please don't tell them it was me. Your soulmate stared. Are you serious? The person began crying. Perhaps they said, "They'll never forgive me." Maybe, they already think I interfere too much. Perhaps there was another layer. You were extremely close to this person. You depended on them emotionally at the time. Maybe you had already lost or become distant from other important people. Your soulmate knew exposing them might shatter one of the few relationships you still trusted. Beloved, this person said, you can say you did it. Your soulmate reacted, what? Please. I'll fix it later. Beloved, your soulmate should have said no. This is important. They should have refused. They should have told you the truth and allowed you to decide how to deal with the person who betrayed your confidence. Instead, your soulmate looked at your situation. Looked at the person crying. Thought about how much you loved them. And made a terrible decision. They agreed. They told themselves, you may be angry with me. But you will survive losing me. Losing this family relationship? Maybe that would hurt you more. Beloved, your soulmate decided which pain you should experience. Again. Without asking. That is why even though the original betrayal was not theirs, your soulmate is not innocent. They lied to you. They let you believe something false about your own life. They took your right to know who had actually broken your confidence. Perhaps they imagined the secret would last only a few days. The other person had promised, I'll tell them when things calm down. But things did not calm down. And the person became more afraid. A week passed. Then another. You became colder toward your soulmate. The real person kept saying, not yet. Your soulmate responded, they hate me. I know. I'm sorry. Beloved, imagine. Every day your soulmate delayed, telling you became harder. Because now the confession would not only be, they did it. It would also be, I knowingly let you blame me for weeks. Your soulmate became trapped inside their own, protective lie. Maybe they began thinking, the relationship is already broken. Why destroy your bond with this other person too? So they continued carrying it. Beloved, eventually you looked at your soulmate during one of your final conversations. Perhaps tears in your eyes. And said, I don't think I'll ever understand why you were willing to lose me over something so unnecessary. Your soulmate remembers every word. They wanted to scream, I didn't do it. They wanted to tell you. Perhaps their mouth actually opened. Then they remembered the other person. The promise. Your closeness with them. And they said nothing. Beloved, you walked away thinking your soulmate valued your trust so little that they betrayed it casually. Your soulmate walked away knowing they had chosen to be hated for a betrayal they did not commit. But beloved, here is where the story becomes even more complicated. At first, your soulmate felt almost noble. Painful, but noble. I protected them. I protected someone they love. Maybe someday the truth will come out. But time changed their perspective. They began asking themselves, who exactly did I protect? Was it you? No. You lived with a false reality. Was it the person who betrayed you? Yes. They avoided consequences. Was it your soulmate? Partly because once they had agreed to the lie, admitting it would expose how badly they had handled everything. Beloved, eventually your soulmate understood. What started as protecting you became cowardice. They had no right to determine that you were better off loving somebody who betrayed you while hating somebody who had not. You deserved reality. Even if reality hurt. Your soulmate almost told you many times. Perhaps they wrote messages. One started, "There is something about why we ended that you still don't know." Delete. Another, "I lied when I let you think I was responsible." Delete. Maybe they even called once. You answered. Hello? Your soulmate heard your voice. Then panicked. Sorry. Wrong call. Beloved, perhaps you remember. Maybe you thought it was strange. They had not dialed accidentally. They were trying to confess. And failed. Years passed. The person who actually shared your secret continued living their life. Perhaps you remained close. Maybe you did not. But beloved, every time your soulmate heard that person mentioned, something inside them twisted. Perhaps your soulmate thought, do they ever feel guilty? Do they see what happened? Maybe they asked them privately. When are you going to tell them? The answer stayed the same. What good would it do now? Beloved. That sentence became an excuse. What good would truth do now? The relationship with your soulmate was already damaged. The original situation had passed. Why reopen it? But truth is not valuable only when it produces a convenient outcome. Sometimes somebody simply has the right to know their own history. Your soulmate understands that now. And recently, the person who started everything finally broke. Perhaps something happened between you and them. Maybe you were having a conversation about trust. And beloved, you unknowingly said something like, "The worst betrayal I ever experienced was from someone I thought would protect my privacy." You meant your soulmate. The person heard it. They knew. Perhaps their face changed. Maybe you did not notice. But afterward, they could not carry it. They contacted your soulmate. Maybe after years of avoiding the subject. The message, "I think I need to tell them." Your soulmate stared at it. Perhaps anger came first. Now, after all this time, the person said, "I can't keep hearing them blame you." Beloved, your soulmate responded, "You should have felt that way years ago." I know. Then, I'm sorry. But something surprised your soulmate. They did not immediately feel relief. They felt fear. Because the secret had become part of the architecture of the past. What happens when you discover that one of your strongest beliefs about your relationship was false? Will you feel relieved? Furious? Will you believe your soulmate? Will you think they invented the story together? Beloved, your soulmate said, "If we tell them, we tell everything." The person agreed. No partial version. No, I accidentally mentioned something. No. The exact truth. How they discovered it. Who they told. Why. How they asked your soulmate to take the blame. How your soulmate agreed. How they repeatedly postponed confessing. Everything. Perhaps there are old messages. Beloved, that is the evidence. Your soulmate had kept them. Not as some secret weapon. They simply never deleted the conversation. Years ago, please just say you told them. I can't do this. Please. They can't know it was me right now. Then your soulmate, you need to tell them soon. The response, I will. Beloved, screenshot after screenshot. Dates. Proof. Your soulmate does not need to ask you to believe a dramatic story blindly. The truth left a trail. And now? Your soulmate is begging you to hear them one last time. Perhaps your phone receives the message. I know you may not want to hear from me, but there is something about our past you were never told. I can prove what I'm saying. I'm asking for one conversation. After that, if you want me gone completely, I will respect it. Beloved, maybe you stare at the screen. Your first reaction, here we go again. Another secret? Another confession? Perhaps you do not answer. Your soulmate waits. An hour. Several. Maybe a day. They do not send 10 messages. Then perhaps one final one, this is about the reason you stopped trusting me. I should have told you years ago. Beloved, that gets your attention. You respond, what are you talking about? Your soulmate asks, can I explain on the phone? Maybe you say, no. Tell me here. Beloved, boundary. Your soulmate respects it. Then, I was not the person who told your family about your plan. Silence. Perhaps you immediately feel anger. What? Your soulmate continues, I let you believe I was. Maybe you think, this is unbelievable. You admitted it. Yes. You apologized. Yes. You told me you thought it was better. Yes. Beloved, your soulmate does not deny any of it. Then, but I was covering for someone. You ask, who? Perhaps they typed the name. Beloved, and your entire body goes still. No. Not that person. Anyone but them. You may immediately reply, you're lying. Your soulmate expected that. They answer, I have the messages. Perhaps they send one screenshot. Not 20. Enough for you to see the date. The name. A line, please don't tell them it was me. Beloved, suddenly the room around you may feel quiet. You scroll. Maybe your hands shake. You recognize the language. The circumstances. It is real. You ask, why? Your soulmate says, they were afraid of losing you. Then, and I made the stupid decision to think you were better off blaming me. Beloved, perhaps anger explodes. You decided that for me? Yes. Who gave you that right? No one. Do you understand what I thought about you? Yes. Then perhaps you say, no, you don't. Beloved, your soulmate stops. You are right. They cannot fully know. Maybe you spent years questioning your judgment. You had trusted your soulmate. Loved them. Perhaps defended them. Then discovered what you believed was undeniable proof that they were unsafe. Maybe you thought, how could I have been so wrong about someone? That damaged your ability to trust your own instincts. Beloved, now you learn your instincts may not have been completely wrong. The person you loved had not committed the original betrayal. But they did something else. They participated in a lie. Perhaps you say, you let me think I was stupid for trusting you. Your soulmate's heart breaks. I know. Again, wrong response perhaps. They correct, I'm sorry. I can see why you felt that. Then, should have told you the truth immediately. You ask, why didn't you? Your soulmate gives the original reason. You loved them. Beloved, perhaps your anger increases. So? I thought losing that relationship would hurt you more than losing me. Silence. There. Maybe this reveals something about how little your soulmate valued their place in your life. They believed themselves disposable. Perhaps you say, you thought losing you wouldn't destroy me? Your soulmate does not know what to say. They had told themselves you would be okay. You were strong. You had family. This other person mattered more. But perhaps your soulmate underestimated your love. Maybe you answer, I spent years thinking the person I loved chose to betray me. Beloved, your soulmate becomes emotional. I know. You reply, stop saying that. They stop. Then, I'm sorry. Maybe silence. You ask, did they tell you to keep lying after we ended? Yes. How many times did you ask them to tell me? Your soulmate gives the truth. Many. Perhaps they show messages. Beloved, you see your soulmate pushing, this has gone too far. They think I did it. The person replies, please, not now. Another months later, you promised. Then, what difference does it make anymore? Beloved. Perhaps a different anger forms. Not toward your soulmate alone. Toward the person you trusted. Maybe you want to call them immediately. Your soulmate says, before you do, there's something else you need to know. Here comes the deeper reveal. What? Your soulmate pauses. Then, they didn't just tell your family. Beloved. There is more. The person also changed one detail. A detail that made your family react much more strongly. Perhaps your original plan was tentative. You were considering an opportunity. The person told them, they've already decided and they're planning to leave without telling anyone. Beloved, that was not true. You had not decided. You were thinking. But your family believed you had already secretly committed. That is why they confronted you so aggressively. You remember. They said, you already made up your mind. And you kept saying, "No, I haven't." Nobody believed you. Beloved, now you know why. The messenger had presented uncertainty as certainty. Why? Because they wanted intervention. They wanted the family to stop you before you made the decision. Perhaps you become speechless. Because suddenly one of the most confusing events of your life makes sense. You had always wondered, why did everyone react as though I had already done something? Now you know. Your soulmate says, "They told me afterward." You ask, and you still protected them? Beloved, devastating. Yes. Perhaps your soulmate cries. Then, that's the part I'm most ashamed of. Not taking blame initially. Continuing after discovering the full extent. Perhaps they say, "I kept thinking the truth would destroy too much." You respond, "The lie already did." Beloved. Exactly. Your soulmate has no defense. The lie destroyed your relationship. Perhaps damaged family trust. Changed your decision. Maybe you abandoned the opportunity entirely because everyone reacted badly. Maybe your life went another direction. Beloved, this is where your soulmate may tell you something important. I have spent years wondering if you would have chosen differently if you had known. You answer, "I don't know." And that is honest. The past cannot be reconstructed perfectly. Perhaps you still would have made the same choice. Maybe not. But your soulmate and the other person interfered with your ability to decide from accurate information. That is the harm. You ask, "Why tell me now?" Your soulmate could say, "Because they finally confessed." But there is more. They say, "Because I realized keeping this secret now is no longer about protecting anybody. It's about protecting myself from what you'll think of me." Beloved. There. Your soulmate is finally stripping away the noble story. They were afraid you would discover, they lied. They chose for you. They let years pass. Perhaps you would hate them more, not less. Still, you deserve truth. Your soulmate continues, "I don't know if this makes what I did better." It doesn't. Maybe you answer quickly. They nod. "I know." Then, "I'm not asking it to." Beloved, good. Perhaps you say, "So what do you want?" Your soulmate answers, "For you to stop carrying a false version of your own past." Pause. "And if you never speak to me after tonight, at least you'll know I wasn't the person who originally betrayed your confidence." You respond, "But you betrayed it differently." Beloved. Your soulmate closes their eyes. Yes. That is the correct answer. They did. They were entrusted with the truth afterward and hid it. Perhaps you ask, "Do you still love me?" Why? Maybe because suddenly everything is rearranged emotionally. Your soulmate does not jump at the opportunity. They say, "Yes." Then, "But that isn't why you should forgive me." Good. Maybe, I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. Beloved, perhaps you are exhausted. You say, I need to go. Your soulmate responds, okay. Then perhaps the phrase from the title, thank you for hearing me one last time. Beloved, maybe something in you reacts. One last time. You ask, why do you keep saying that? Your soulmate becomes quiet. Then, because I promised myself that if you heard the truth and wanted me gone, would stop reopening the wound. There. Not fake departure. Not some dramatic deadline. A boundary. They know they have interfered with your peace enough. Perhaps you say nothing. The call ends. Beloved, now you are alone with a completely altered story. The person you thought betrayed you did not do the original act. The person you believed was safe did. And the person you loved knowingly became the villain in your mind. Speechless may be exactly how you feel. Perhaps you open the screenshots again. Dates. Messages. You remember that period. Every conversation starts taking on new meaning. Maybe your soulmate once said, there are things you don't know. You replied, then tell me. They said, I can't. You thought it was manipulation. Now you know what they meant. Still, they could have told you. Perhaps one line in the screenshots breaks your heart more than anything. After you ended the relationship, your soulmate had messaged the real person, they think I never loved them. The response, I'm sorry. Your soulmate, sorry isn't enough anymore. Then perhaps, tell them. Beloved. Maybe the other person refused. You stare. You did not know your soulmate understood what their silence was making you believe. They knew. And still remained silent. That may make forgiveness harder. But it also shows the depth of the conflict. Your soulmate chose the wrong thing deliberately while believing it prevented another kind of damage. Beloved, explanation. Not absolution. Maybe days pass. You do not contact your soulmate. They keep their promise. No message. No quote posted online hoping you see it. No mutual friend asking how you feel. Nothing. Perhaps that silence feels different. Because for the first time, it is not avoidance. It is respect. Meanwhile, you confront the real person. Maybe you ask, did you tell my family? Beloved, their face tells you before their mouth does. Eventually, yes. Did you ask them to take the blame? Tears. Yes. Maybe you feel betrayal in a completely different way. Why? The person explains fear. They did not want you to leave. They thought family intervention would make you reconsider. They were afraid of losing closeness. Perhaps they thought your plan was reckless. Beloved, maybe some of their concern was genuine. But their behavior was still controlling. You say, you could have talked to me. I know. Instead, you turned everyone against a decision I hadn't even made. I'm sorry. Perhaps you ask, why did you let me hate them? Silence. Then, because every day that passed made telling you harder. Beloved. Same pattern as your soulmate. Fear creates silence. Silence creates consequences. Consequences make truth scarier. And the cycle continues. Perhaps this is the moment you understand something enormous. Two people claim to be protecting you. Both removed your choice. One shared your secret. The other hid who shared it. Different actions. Same underlying mistake, they did not trust you with your own reality. Beloved, that becomes the real lesson. Perhaps you tell the person, I need distance. They cry. Maybe they apologize. But you do not immediately soothe them. Boundaries. They created a consequence. Perhaps the relationship eventually repairs. Perhaps not. But this time, you choose with truth. Days later, perhaps you finally message your soulmate. Only 3 words, I spoke to them. Your soulmate sees it. Heart racing. They reply, okay. Not, so you believe me now? No. You write, they admitted everything. Your soulmate stares. Perhaps relief. Then grief. Because now there is no possibility you will think they fabricated it. The truth is confirmed. Your soulmate says, I'm sorry. Maybe you respond, I know. Then silence. Perhaps hours later, why did you think losing you would hurt me less? Beloved. This is the question underneath everything. Your soulmate answers slowly. Because I didn't understand how much I mattered to you. Perhaps you become angry. I told you. I know. Then, I think I heard your love, but I didn't believe I deserved it. Beloved, that may explain some of your soulmate's self-sabotage. Maybe they were so convinced you could recover from losing them that they volunteered themselves as the sacrifice. They thought, let them hate me. They'll move on. But perhaps you did not simply move on. You carried the wound. Your soulmate says, I thought I was protecting something you needed. Then, I didn't realize I was destroying something you needed too. Trust. Your relationship. Your confidence in your own judgment. Perhaps you ask, would you do it again? Immediate, no, beloved, then your soulmate explains what they would do now. I would tell you. Even if it destroyed my relationship with them? Yes. Even if I thought the truth would hurt me? Yes. Why? Because it's your life. Beloved. Simple. The lesson. Perhaps you say, that's all you had to understand. I know. Maybe silence again. Then your soulmate asks, can I ask you something? What? Did you ever stop loving me because of what you thought I did? Beloved, dangerous question. You answer however the story needs. Maybe, no, your soulmate becomes silent. You continue, that was the problem. Perhaps you loved them while believing they had betrayed you. That created unbearable conflict. Your heart said, I love this person. Your mind said, they are not safe. So you had to leave. Maybe your soulmate whispers, "I'm sorry." You say, "I know." Beloved, perhaps this is the first time. "I know" sounds different. Not closure, but acknowledgement. You may ask them, "Do you expect me to come back now?" Your soulmate responds immediately, "No." Then, honest correction, "I hope there could be something someday." Pause. But I don't think learning I wasn't responsible for one betrayal automatically makes me trustworthy. Beloved. Excellent. Because they still lied. Trust must account for the full story. Your soulmate says, "Would rather you take time and judge who I am now." Perhaps you ask, "And if I decide I can't?" I'll respect it. No begging now. The begging was only for the truth to be heard, not for your heart to be returned. Beloved, perhaps that is what changes something. Your soulmate did not use the revelation like a coupon. "See? I wasn't the bad one. Come back." They understand complexity. They were falsely blamed for one act and genuinely responsible for another. That ability to hold both may be evidence of maturity. Perhaps weeks pass. You speak again. Not daily. Slowly. You ask questions. Your soulmate answers. Maybe you become frustrated and repeat something. They do not say, "We already talked about this." They know your understanding of years has just been altered. You need time to reorganize memory. Perhaps one day you say, "I keep remembering that night." What night? The night I asked you if you told them. Your soulmate becomes quiet. You say, "I can still see your face." They respond, "I remember." What were you thinking? Beloved, perhaps this is the moment. Your soulmate finally tells you. "I was thinking that if I said no, you would ask who did. And I knew I wouldn't be able to lie twice. So they said, I'm sorry." Beloved. One vague phrase became a confession you carried for years. Perhaps you ask, "Did you want me to know?" Yes. Then why didn't you just tell me? Because I thought protecting someone you loved was an act of love toward you. You sigh. And now? Now I think love would have trusted you with the consequences. Beloved. Exactly. Perhaps this new understanding changes the way both of you communicate. If another person says something, bring it directly. If family pressure appears, tell each other. No one is allowed to become a secret messenger controlling the relationship. Maybe you set a rule: nobody gets protected through lies. Your soulmate agrees. Perhaps you add, "If someone does something that affects me, I get to decide whether I forgive them." Yes. No more soulmate deciding, "You cannot handle this." Beloved, maybe you eventually meet. The first meeting after the truth is strange. Your soulmate sits across from you. Perhaps you look at them and think, "I know this face." But the story behind it has changed. You ask, "Why did you keep the screenshots?" Your soulmate answers, "I don't know." Then perhaps, maybe part of me always hoped I'd become brave enough to tell you. You say, it took you long enough. They smile sadly. Yes. Perhaps there is no dramatic embrace. No instant kiss. Good. You talk. Maybe you finally say, I wish you had trusted how much I loved you. Your soulmate looks at you. So do I. Beloved, that may be the deepest regret. Your soulmate thought they were disposable enough to sacrifice. You thought you were unimportant enough to betray. Both people walked away with false beliefs about their own value. Perhaps truth repairs at least that. You tell them, you mattered. Your soulmate says, you mattered too. Maybe, that's why I was afraid. Beloved, fear again. But this time your soulmate knows fear is not a decision maker. Perhaps you ask, if we ever tried again, what happens when protecting me and telling me the truth feel like different things? Your soulmate answers, I tell you the truth. Then, and I stay while you react to it. Beloved. The second part matters. Some people tell the truth and then disappear because they cannot handle consequences. Your soulmate wants to stay in the conversation. Perhaps you say, even if I'm angry? Yes. Even if the truth makes me leave? They swallow. Yes. Because your informed choice matters more than maintaining the relationship through concealment. Beloved, that is growth. Maybe trust slowly returns. Perhaps not fully. Perhaps you realize you can forgive but not rebuild romance. If so, your soulmate must accept. But perhaps something remains. Then, beloved, you build from the present. Not, we were secretly perfect all along. No. You had real problems. One major assumption about the past has simply been corrected. That may create possibility. It does not create obligation. Perhaps months later, the person who actually betrayed you apologizes again. You tell your soulmate. They ask, what did you say? Maybe, I accepted the apology. I'm still keeping distance. Your soulmate says, whatever you need. No pressure for family unity. No, you should forgive them because they were scared. Your forgiveness is your decision. Beloved, perhaps this is how your soulmate proves they finally learned. They stop deciding what your feelings should be. Then one evening, you ask, why did you say, one last time? Your soulmate smiles slightly. Because I meant it. What if I never responded after the truth? I would have left you alone. Even though you love me? Yes. Beloved, perhaps you stare. Your soulmate continues, I finally understood loving you doesn't give me unlimited permission to enter your life. There. Maybe one of the most important lessons in the entire story. They wanted you to hear the truth because you deserved it. Once heard, the decision belonged to you. Perhaps you say, do you still think this is your last chance? Your soulmate takes a breath. Then, no, you look surprised. They explain, I don't think love should be built on countdowns anymore. Beautiful. This isn't my last chance. It's simply the first time I'm trying to do this honestly. Beloved. That changes the energy. No emotional blackmail. No, answer before I disappear forever. One truth. Then freedom. Perhaps you ask, what was the truth you were most afraid to tell me? Your soulmate could say, that someone else betrayed you. But perhaps they answer something deeper. That I knew you would hate me, and I chose the lie anyway. Beloved. Because that is their real responsibility. They knew the cost. Maybe not how large it would become. But they knew. And they did it because they were trying to control pain. Your soulmate says, I thought I could choose which heartbreak would be easier for you. Pause. I was wrong. You reply, you don't get to choose my heartbreak. No, maybe, I only get to choose whether I'm honest. Beloved. There. Perhaps that becomes a new foundation. And perhaps later, after months of consistent behavior, you begin seeing the person you once loved without the false betrayal sitting between you. Maybe one night you say, I spent years thinking the worst thing about you was that you told them. Your soulmate asks, and now? You smile sadly. Now I think the worst thing was that you thought I couldn't handle knowing who actually did. Your soulmate nods. That was worse. Because it denied your strength. Your judgment. Your right to decide. Perhaps your soulmate says, I won't do that again. You respond, don't promise. They look at you. Show me. Beloved. Exactly. And they do. Not through grand declarations. Through ordinary truth. Something uncomfortable happens. They tell you. Someone criticizes you. They tell you accurately. They make a mistake. They admit it before you discover it. They do not manipulate context to control your reaction. Slowly, perhaps trust becomes less about the past and more about the person in front of you. Beloved, the truth that left you speechless was not that your soulmate had secretly been perfect. They were not. It was that one of the central facts you had built your understanding around was wrong. They were not the person who originally exposed your secret. Someone you trusted did. Your soulmate took the blame. Then committed their own betrayal by letting you live inside that false story. Complex. Painful. Human. And perhaps that is why this final conversation matters. It does not turn your soulmate into a hero. It finally turns them into someone willing to stop hiding behind the role of villain. They are saying, blame me for what I actually did. Pause. But please stop blaming yourself for trusting me in the first place. Beloved, perhaps that is the sentence that reaches deepest. You were not foolish for sensing that your soulmate loved you. You were not crazy for feeling the relationship had been deeper than their behavior at the end suggested. Something else had been happening behind the scenes. Your instincts were not completely wrong. But neither were your boundaries. With the information you had, walking away made sense. Your soulmate understands. They do not say, "If only you had trusted me." No. How could you? They deliberately gave you false evidence. So perhaps their final apology is this: "I spent years wishing you had seen through my lie. Then, now I understand you should never have been required to." Beloved, that is accountability. You should not have had to decode them. Perhaps they end with, "I didn't tell them. I took the blame. I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong." Then, you deserved the truth then, and you deserve it now. And beloved, for perhaps the first time in years, your soulmate does not ask, "Do you still love me?" They ask something far more important: "Now that you..." Love is not a puzzle where enough devotion reveals the secret correct answer. People need to speak. Your soulmate finally is. One last time. Not because they know whether there will be another conversation, but because they are no longer willing to let silence write your history. Know what actually happened. What do you want? And this time, they are finally prepared to let you answer.